For most people, sky is the limit. For flight attendants, sky is home. This is Adnan Baranbo, and you are listening to a new episode of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. Our topic for today's episode is cabin crew life in the air. And my guest for today to discuss this topic is Miss Heidi Cole. Good day, Heidi. Thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much. I love you that you said sky is the home, because that's what it really feels like. It really does feel like that. So
indeed.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Thank you very much. So Heidi, you are an aviapreneur from the UK. You started your career as a corporate flight attendant in Dubai, working for Empire Aviation Group. And then you moved to work for Executive Aviation Group and for other private operators. And recently you started your own coaching, training, and consulting business, Confidence in the Air. I'm gonna start with your business, Confidence in the Air. What a beautiful name you have chosen for your business. What services do you provide in this business?
Thanks so much. So I guess before I talk about the services, maybe just to give you some context on why I started it.
Please.
And I never had any plans to start a business. But I did think, being almost 50 at the time, I thought I'm probably going to have to start thinking about a business, because how long is our career going to be in the air? People start worrying about the future. And luckily I've never been worried, because I've always sort of been able to bust through various limitations anyway. But I did think, maybe I should start looking at something, but I didn't have any plans per se. And then during the pandemic, that's about only the second time in my life, in my 17-year private flying career, that I haven't been able to work. Before that, it was one time when I was sacked from a flying job, and suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, what now? And it was almost like I really equate flying jobs to relationships. It's like you're in this marriage almost, and you're committed, you're loyal, and then suddenly you get sacked and you're like, now what? So now you're grieving this job that you've lost, and then trying to find something else. And effectively when I was sacked that time, the interesting thing is that I did find another job, but before I was about to sign, the old boss asked me back. The reason I was sacked is because they said I was too expensive. Now, not that I was too expensive per se, but because in their mind, they didn't fly very much. So they said, we're paying her a lot and we don't fly much. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, I put my everything into this and I'm only available for you. So whenever you want to fly, I'm available. And it was a clash of sort of values there. And I was let go. I was devastated, of course. And then 3 months later, I was re-employed again because they found somebody cheaper. They said, it's not working. Let's get Heidi back. And I said, great, I would love to come back. I've just been offered another role and it's paying more. And they said, but we sacked you because you were too expensive. I said, I totally understand, but I have been offered another role now. It's paying more. So if you're happy to match it, I'm happy to come back. So they did. So it was a really awful situation. At the time, it felt really stressful, but in the end, I ended up getting a higher salary for the following 2 years until, again, I was sacked from that role again. And I say sacked in a term of, we often associate being sacked because we've done something really dreadful, but it's just that the role didn't align anymore. The boss wanted me to work at the house, to change countries, and that wasn't going to be me, but it was perfect for somebody else, which was great. So that was about the only time where I panicked in my career. And the second time was COVID. And I've always been drawn to sort of working on myself, understanding others, have a great interest in psychology. And I've had therapy in my time for various things as well. So I thought when the pandemic hit, I thought, no problem. I'm so prepared for this because I've done so much work on myself. And no, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what had happened. I lost complete sense of myself. And the thing that struck me was when I wasn't flying, I thought, I don't know who I am when I'm not flying. And that was just such a shock to me because I thought I knew who I was. And I just completely associated who I was with what I do. And that started a whole journey of just deep sort of exploration. I couldn't do it myself. I recognized I really needed somebody's support. So I enlisted an incredible coach, and life really started to change. I was in a place of desperation. The support groups that I was in had turned into groups of mass hysteria. And it was almost like I'd check in with these groups, and there was so much fear in there, like 200 people going, anybody got any jobs? I haven't, and then I started to take that on myself. And then even applying for roles I would never have applied for before, I couldn't even get those. And it was like, that set my confidence even lower, right? And when I enlisted with a coach, and this is where I started to learn how to value myself more. So therefore I wouldn't have the desperation, just to trust that things would work out one way or another. And the strangest thing happened. When I lost the desperation around flying, within 2 weeks of that time, people started calling me, really amazing jobs, well paid, fantastic clients. And I was like, wow, the industry must have really changed and picked up again. So I checked in with these groups, and nope, still mass hysteria. And I thought everybody must be working, because people are calling me. I'm not even chasing them, they're calling me. And it wasn't, they're still not working, but I was. And I thought, I don't understand. And then it hit me. I thought a huge amount can be felt that we project in the way we write, in the way we speak to people, and everybody could pick up desperation. And desperation, it doesn't feel good to be around. So when I was applying for things with desperation, I didn't even get a response most of the time. And yet when I lost desperation in myself, that's where people started to contact me. And that was the only difference. And that's where I thought, this is huge. I can see so many people really struggling right now. And it's really just a place of where they're at, a lack of confidence, worried about everything. And even in the middle of a complete mess and meltdown in the aviation industry, people were searching me out. And I thought, this is something that I don't want other people to struggle with. And that was where the idea was born with this. When I thought, well, I've got 17 years of experience in private aviation. I can teach people the skills of what's made me successful in the cabin, but also that extra element of that confidence that you also need. It's like that solid foundation that you need in interviews, you need in the cabin, and also to keep your job. And this is where it's really interesting in terms of confidence. The person that sacked me because I was too expensive, in that job, there was a time where I was working full time for a while, and then they agreed to give me a rotation. So the boss said, you need to find somebody that I'll be happy with while you're not here. I said, sure. And in my mind, I thought, this boss likes a really nice service. I use the white gloves and all of that stuff. So I focused on finding somebody with really amazing serving skills. And she was fantastic. She was carving fruit and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the boss was like, wow, she's amazing. Give her the job. I said, yeah. And I was like, she's incredible. This is awesome. And after 3 months, she lost her job.
Wow.
And I was like, why? And the boss said, well, she just didn't feel right anymore. And that was one of my first concepts of, it's not about what we do, but it's the experience we create about how the passenger feels. And just to give this more context, that was the passenger that after 3 freelance jobs, I really messed up. I was in the galley, the door was open, the passenger could see me, and I was pulling out some food from the oven, and it went tipped upside down. Passenger saw me.
Wow.
Because of worst case scenario, right? And most people would go into emergency panic mode because they're like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. What's my boyfriend going to say? What my friends are going to say? And how am I going to pay my bills? And then, and you're like this. Whereas because I was able to handle it really well and really calmly, at the end of that flight, the passenger said, Heidi, can I speak to you? I said, yeah, sure. And I thought, oh, can't be good, but equally, if the passenger didn't want to see me anymore, they wouldn't even speak to me. Just when I get off, they'd be like, please don't ask her back. Sure, that's usually how it happens. But this is where the passenger said, Heidi, I'd like you to work for me permanently. I'm like, what? In my mind, I'm thinking, I've just tipped all your food on the floor and you want to give me a permanent position? And that was the first time I realized that it's way more than our serving skills. And most people will only really focus on the serving skills to give them confidence. But in
So he liked
moments
your
like
confidence. He liked your confidence.
that, yeah. And in moments like that, your serving skills aren't going to help. You've really got to be able to handle things with skill and finesse and confidence, because that makes the passenger feel like basically you've got your shit together, that they can trust you, that you trust yourself, and that they feel like they can be at home, because that aircraft is an extension of their home. So yeah, sorry, that was a very long way of explaining.
Actually, it's amazing. It's amazing story. You really gave us context, and at the same time, it's very unique experience. You used your own suffering, your own experience to discover the value you need, and you started creating this value to give it to others. So it's amazing story on how people can create business out of their own suffering and experience. I highly salute you for that. And how is the reaction of the market now? Let me go back to my question and I ask you, what services, what support are you providing to your clients, to the cabin crew you are helping? Now we understand the story of the business. What do you do for them?
So what I do is that I offer a program where I take them from scratch through to, how to be single crew at the end of 4 weeks. But I realize it's all kind of learning and experimentation as I go. I realize that people, the questions they will ask at the start are very different to the questions they'll ask at the end, because as they're growing and expanding and learning, our questions change. And I thought it needs to be longer support, where I actually support them to get into the role, to find the role, to get into the role, and then to actually feel comfortable in the role, and then off they go. It's like sort of bringing up, a child or whatever it is, it's that kind of process of getting them there. Because I realized that in many of my clients that have come to me have done other courses, not always, but have done other courses, but said there was so much information delivered in such a short space of time that I wasn't able to process it all. And I certainly don't have the confidence to put it into practice in the cabin. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to nail an interview successfully. And I thought, this is what I need to help with. And it all comes down to confidence, a lot of it. So that's what I infuse throughout. So there's that program. And then I also recognize that people are coming to me saying, hey, look, I've invested a lot in a high-end program already. I just need extra confidence skills. And some people have come to me with 8 years experience saying, I'm struggling with confidence, how I handle stress in the cabin. When I'm stressed, I can't prioritize. People see it, they don't want to work with me anymore. And that affects our whole career. And so for that, I developed a mini confidence program. And then there's also one just for job skills, again, where people might be like, look, I'm feeling pretty confident. I've got all my skills, but I'm just not great with job interviews, or I really want to get this job. I don't want to waste time, and maybe I will, maybe I want to really up my chances of getting this job. And so far, there's only been one lady that I've coached that hasn't gotten a job.
Wow,
and that's
a very high ratio.
Yeah, and it's simply because she was told that she wouldn't need any corporate flying experience. But when she had the interview, because another lady had interviewed that had already done a training course, the lady came back to her and said, look, I'm sorry, because another lady that I liked had already done a training course, she will need less hand-holding than you will. So therefore, I've chosen her. Mm-hmm. So we can't guarantee we're always going to get it, but
like all consultants, definitely, and coach, like all coaches, you cannot guarantee, definitely.
Yeah, and even just simple things, like, if you're having a Zoom interview, looking at the camera, because that's the eye contact, that's what creates the connection. Making sure you've got good lighting. Because I've, sat with people who are, that they're down here, and it's just simple things like that. And then also, how do you transition that into an in-person interview, and how to represent yourself? You've got one opportunity, and that's it. So you want to nail it. So yeah. So that's effectively what I do.
Yeah, this is definitely very important. And do you focus your training only on corporate flight attendants, or do you also give the training for commercial flight attendants?
I'm really glad you've asked that, actually, because only this morning I had another lady reach out to me that wants to get into commercial. And she said, can you help me with that? So again, it's something that I know commercial inside and out, and this is just corporate's like just that extra other level where it's almost like it's magnified in detail. But commercial, there it doesn't change that much. You still have to have the same traits, the same personality, the same desire to want to do the role. But then corporate's just that kind of real attention to detail on every level. Everything's magnified. So yeah, so when people reach out, I'm able to support them with that as well to get them there really quickly. So yeah.
And I know that originally you are a TV presenter in Dubai. So I noted that you are posting videos on coaching and training the cabin crew on the skills you just mentioned. So definitely your media exposure and experience provided benefit to this business. But how are you doing the training and the coaching? Are you doing them one-to-one or one to a group or online?
Yes, so there's a mixture actually. It depends on what each person wants, but of course, one-on-one is always more expensive because it's like there's just one of me and I only have a certain amount of time. But I also do group coaching where I work with a very small group, like just less than a handful of people at a time, and I'll take them through a process. So it's really nice because the feedback I've had is that people have said, look, this is amazing because it's good to know that the stuff that I am struggling with or worried about, it's not just me. There are other people going through the same, and to see them all grow and blossom together is amazing. Then they're able to cheer each other on each time each one gets a job. And it also gives them hope and inspiration that actually, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. And again, that's a big part of who I am. It's the difference with coaching is that if you're somebody that is just delivering a program, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people have success with this, just going on a program or a quick course, and then they're still able to get jobs, which is great. But the difference is if you work with a coach, for me, because I still continue to work with a coach as well to constantly up-level my skills, is that your coach is able to see the potential, the highest potential in you, and they can believe in that and help you to believe in it yourself. But if we're working with people that have only reached a certain level themselves, or they don't think that you have the potential, then you're only going to reach as far as they believe in you. So because I've pushed through so many limitations myself, I mean, people have written to me in late 30s, early 40s saying, oh my God, I'm so old now and I'm clearly too late to start. And I'm like, hey, I'm 51 and I have not stopped working. In fact, in July, I've got one day off. It's just, people are constantly calling me for flying work and I'm trying to slow down a bit, but it's not slowing down. And again, I've pushed through so many limitations with age, where at 48, I got a job that the age limitation was 30. And it's a very controversial industry because there's a lot of discrimination and it's very clear. But in my, and I'm sure many people may not agree with my approach, but I'm like, look, if we focus on the limitations, we're always going to be limited. But there are ways to make this happen, you know, where I push through that limitation of getting a job 18 years older than they were looking for. You know, nationality sometimes comes into it. You know, I've just been offered a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off job that I should never have gotten, but I could see the little cracks in between. And they said, yeah, we'd love to hire you. So again, if we focus on the opportunity and not the limitation, I just see limitations as guidelines. You know, I coached a lady who was 52 at the time. She'd just come out of commercial aviation and she got her first private flying job. And I'm like, look, please tell people, because this will inspire them, because I've got people writing to me at 38 saying I'm too old. And it's really about our perception of things. You know, a lot of it's just not true, you know, or it's there, but, you know, are we going to focus on the limitation, or are we going to get past that? And because I've done it myself so many times, and I just coached a lady recently, 54, African-American. She's just gotten a job as well just last week. Again, she was feeling very limited because of limitations. And I'm like, no, it's a load of rubbish. It's all about connection, delivering, you know, your passion, showing that you're creating that experience in the interview. And therefore they'll know that you can do that in the cabin. You'll feel different. And it worked. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe this works. I'm like, yeah. And the lovely upside is that as we build our confidence, because obviously I'm teaching it for the role, but the lovely side effect is that we take this into our life. You know, every decision we make every single day is either based on lack of confidence or having confidence. And that's going to send us two different ways in our life in general. And I know this happened to me, you know, we might choose a shitty relationship because we don't feel we deserve a good person, or we'll choose a good one. You know, confidence is like links us to everything. So it's a really lovely side effect that people don't necessarily know they need it, but once they do it, they're like, whoa, I feel so different now, and I'm way more fulfilled. I feel happier in general when I wake up. All of those things start to happen. So it's just so lovely to do that.
Very inspiring stories. As you mentioned, you should share more of them. And limitation, as you said, sometimes it's a motivation for creativity and for innovation, because our limitation push us to go beyond our limits. But when you are coaching and training these prospective cabin crew, do you think the opportunity is available for anyone to be a cabin crew, or are there some natural born skills required for success in this job?
This is a great question. It's one that I've pondered a great deal. And if anybody has ever worked in commercial airlines, you'll realize that sometimes I feel like as cabin crew, you know, the skills and the traits that we have about ourselves growing up, we might feel like we're sort of outsiders because we are drawn to different things than other people are. You know, we want to travel, we want adventure, we want freedom, and people are like, yeah, but that doesn't fit in with normal society, you know. And when you start being cabin crew, you're like, oh, thank God, I'm amongst people that understand me, because we're all the same. We all want the same things, we're all excited by the same things, we're all driven by the same things. So effectively, if you're driven by freedom, connection, really connecting with people, travel, of course, and adventure in general, you're going to love this job. If you're not going to love it at all. And this is why, particularly wanting to connect with people and that love of people in general is something that can be one of the most taxing things, because when you have difficult passengers as well, it's something that you have to have a real skill with people. So if you've done a lot of customer service in the past, even if it's on the telephone, where you've had people shouting at you, you know, how do you handle that? Are you able to not take it personally, for example? But again, there's skills that can be taught, which is what I teach as well. But if you have those skills, it's going to really help you to get a job as cabin crew. And then generally, once you've been cabin crew, that's a good way to then start getting into private aviation. So yeah, I mean, for example, you know, I mean, certainly my boyfriend wouldn't be good in the cabin. You know, he doesn't have a lot of patience for people in general. If they're like upset, or he's like, oh, get over yourself. I mean, you know, I can't do that. So it's, you know, it's just really, you know, if you're drawn to people in general, if you sort of love sort of understanding what makes them tick and really connecting with them, then that is what is really going to make you good in this role.
So it all comes down to passion. If someone has passion for serving, for being with people, they can succeed on this job. This is very interesting. It gives hope for so many people that they have an opportunity in this industry.
Absolutely. And also, just to add to that, if you're working in corporate aviation, particularly, you need to be really good at, you need to be very resourceful. You need to be good at researching. You need to be a self-starter. You need to be able to think out of the box and think, right, okay, how can I make that work? What can I do here to make this happen? So you've got to really be somebody that doesn't, you know, is able to come up with ideas and all of that sort of thing. So a lot of common sense, I guess. So, yeah.
You just mentioned that the candidate or the cabin crew should be patient, should be thoughtful on how to deal with a passenger who might scream on them. But in reality, do private passengers scream on cabin crew?
I've had it, very rarely, but I have had it. And this is where it's really important for us not to take it personally. And again, the thing is, we're not made of stone. We are human beings. But again, it's about our human beingness connecting with their human beingness, despite the fact that they're super wealthy billionaires, that we might be a bit scared of them, that maybe they have a loud voice at the time. they're still human beings and they still have the same needs as us cabin crew or whoever it is. And oftentimes they just want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be listened to. They want to feel like you care. And often even coming with that energy and really being focused and saying, how can I make this better for you? You know, what is it you need, right? What could I do right now that will make this better? Even that simple statement, rather than trying to defend yourself, well, I did this and I did that, and it just inflames the situation. So it's kind of really about us and that energy that we bring, and having the confidence to do that, to not be toppled and not be knocked, and just understanding that each person is a unique individual as we are, and just understanding that each person will need something different. And I have this this really funny story, actually, if I may share it.
Please. Actually, my next question was about stories, about your experience.
Oh,
because,
okay.
because everybody is fascinated about cabin crew life and the stories you experience on board. So go ahead, please share it and share others.
Oh, wonderful. So I actually shared this story in an interview that I had, and they said, that's great. We've actually learned something today. And as I say, I'm always learning myself. And I had a passenger who loved pistachios. Now, this is a thing they didn't want much, but they absolutely wanted to have pistachios. So where I was in Europe, part of my job is to make sure that everything is on board that they want. So I went to probably 10 different very high-end places to buy the finest of pistachios. So I had about 10 different packets. I checked the expiry dates. That's important as well. Make sure they're well in date, so they're going to be fresh. And I walked into the cabin. I had them on a silver tray. I served them to the guest and elegantly left. And I said, may I serve you anything else? No, okay. And then I left. The next thing I knew, I could hear this like explosion. That's what it felt like in the cabin. I had the cabin door slightly open, and it was simply because with the gloss on the wood, there's a lot of reflection. So that's my way of discreetly being able to keep an eye on what's going on in the cabin. So I could actually see from the galley what was going on. The passenger was going crazy. So keeping the door almost closed, it gives them privacy, but it still gives you the opportunity to keep an eye on what's going on. So I could see this, and I thought, okay, what's going on here? So the boss was shouting for his PA, and he's like, rah! And he was so angry. It was like beetroot. I could even see in the reflection, beetroot, bright red. And he's like, and he was so angry, he couldn't even remember my name. And he's like, tell her, these pistachios not fresh. And I thought, okay. And I'm like, I've got so many fresh pistachios here. I thought, this is strange. So then the PA came in the galley, said, Heidi, come on, what's up? What's going on here? And I said, honestly, like literally hand on heart, I said, I don't know. I've got all these fresh pistachios here. And I can hear that he's saying they're not fresh. He said, yeah, he says they're not fresh. I was like, okay. I said, well, look, I'll go and speak to him. He's like, no. The boss is so angry. It'll make him worse. I said, no. I need to talk to him. So he said, okay, I'm going to quickly run away now. So he left. Like, everybody's like so scared. So I walked into the cabin. The passengers still like, and bright red. So I went in, I bent down, and we learned this in commercial aviation, by the way. We always bend down to either their height or lower to sort of give them more, so it feels like they have more power, so to speak. So I bent down very calmly, and I hand on heart, and I had a tray with me with all of the pistachios on, hand on heart. And I said, and I looked him in the eye and said, I am so sorry. I understand that these pistachios are not fresh. He's like, yeah. I said, I am so sorry. If I may, this is what I did. I bought all of these pistachios, and as you will see, at least 1 year in advance. So they should be fresh, but I understand they're not. I didn't want to argue with him because that would inflame things even more. I wanted to acknowledge what was going on for him because this was his truth for him. And I said, and he said, no, they're not fresh. I said, okay. I said, would you please educate me on what are fresh pistachios? Because in my understanding, these are fresh. So what am I missing here? Tell me. Calm down. He said, yes, well, actually, they need to be green. I said, well, forgive me, but I'm looking and they look green to me. And he said, yes, but no. I was like, okay. And then he took a pistachio, bit it in half, and then he showed me, he said, look, white in the middle. I was like, oh, I said, I had no idea. I said, thank you for the education. He said, yes, okay, we must be careful. I said, okay, calm down. And then he remembered my name after, and then he remembered my name after that. And I was like, I got an education there. Who knew that fresh pistachios have to be green? And the thing is, because this boss was from the Middle East, he was very used to getting really beautiful fresh nuts from Iran and all those kinds of places where they don't taste like what we get in Europe, right? They taste old, because when I tasted them in the Middle East, I was like, this is what they're meant to taste like. We don't have that in Europe. It's very rare unless you go to Harrods and pay like £20 a gram or something, you know. So again, it's really about, doesn't matter what happens, but it's really about making them feel seen, feel heard, having the confidence to approach it. And generally, when you make them feel that you really care and that you want to try and resolve the situation, it will calm the situation down. Not every time. I'll bring in another quick story as well. And this is how commercial aviation differs to private. This is where alcohol is concerned. So, you know, you're always going to get people say, like, book a private jet, go to Vegas, you've got some whole like party going on. And, you know, it's a bit different in commercial, but in commercial aviation, for example, if people are drinking too much, because you don't want it to get to a point where people are unruly and maybe trying to open doors and all that stuff that we've heard about in the press before. So, you know, it's a risk, it's a safety risk. So we have to monitor what they're drinking. So in commercial aviation, you can easily just say, look, I'm so sorry, the bar's closed now. However, I can offer you, you know, whatever. And in private aviation, we can't really do that. It's very much a yes. How do I make this possible for you? Yes. How many and how big, right? It's very different sort of approach, but equally, we also have to be really mindful of safety. So this is where I had a passenger who nobody wanted to say no to because it was the boss's son. So the boss wasn't on board, but the boss's son was on board and all the guests. And they said, well, we can't say no to him because it's the boss's son. So everybody's in fear. So it was really down to me to and the girls to handle this situation. And effectively, just he was actually just rolling around like this and sort of bashing. It was like in a pinball machine, just bashing into people. And I thought, oh, this isn't good. And they're probably going to vomit really soon. So I'm like, get some sick bags ready just in case. So anyway, this person just kept coming into the galley and saying, can I have more champagne? Can I have more champagne? I said, yes, of course you can. So I made sure I had my back turned in between the passenger and they could see I'm holding the bottle. So I'm tipping in about a centimetre and I'm topping it up with bubbly, fizzy water and handing it. Didn't know the difference because the bubbles and the fizzy water, it gives them mouthfeel. So it convinces our brain that, and because there's a little bit of taste of it, but actually it's sobering them up at the same time. I'm like, yeah, just keep coming back for more. You're all good. And then they start to sober themselves up without us having to say no. And again, another trick that I learned in commercial, also bring into private, you might have run out of champagne at this point. So you can't keep pretending you're giving them champagne. And this is where I'll say, oh, let me make you a really nice gin and tonic. And I'll make it sound really appealing. Now, usually when people are drunk, they're not going to say no. They're like, oh, okay then. And this is where you fill up a whole glass with ice and tonic water, and you just take your finger and you touch a little bit of gin, just like a little drop, and you just rub it around the rim of the glass. Wow. So again, when you give it to them, they, you know, our olfactory senses in our nose will convince us that we're drinking gin, and we'll taste the tonic. So that mixture together of what we're sensing in our nose and then the taste makes us feel like we're drinking gin and tonic, but actually we're sobering ourselves up. So again, there's a few little tricks, but you know, it's easier for us in commercial to say, well, that's the rules. No, bar's closed, or you're not having any more to drink. Or maybe you can bring that gin and tonic trick into it and come out, as I say, private, we have to be a bit more creative as to how we don't say no, but equally we keep the flight safe and the passenger happy. Because the passenger's like, well, they just said yes to everything, but actually they don't realize that
that's amazing. Amazing emotional intelligence. I'm very impressed.
Awesome.
Heidi, the stories you are sharing, the life in the air of the cabin crew is very fascinating world for all of us. I would like to continue listening to you and to your stories for a long time, but unfortunately we have limited time here in the podcast. So before we close, I would like to ask you about the advice and the recommendation you give to all the cabin crew out there who are listening to us and who wish to know how can they combine flying career with starting a business, with managing and growing a business, or for these cabin crew who want to stop flying for whatever reason and start their own business. What do you advise them to do?
Absolutely. I would definitely look at it. It always comes down to passion, because running a business, I won't lie, and I don't want to put people off because it's the best thing I've ever done. But it does take a lot of work, dedication, and commitment that you don't expect you're going to have to do. It's almost like bringing up a child, you know, from conception right the way through, and you're learning as you go as well. And even for me, for example, being a coach, I didn't realize how much coaching myself I'd have to do to be a coach myself, because I can't coach people on their limitations if I haven't pushed through them myself. So there's all sorts of stuff there. But being able to do a business as well is perfect when you're flying, because we do have a lot of downtime, you know, a lot of time in hotels, a lot of time at home. So it's perfect. And because of the internet now, we're in an incredible age now that we can run so many things online. You know, there are and being cabin crew, we're so resourceful. There's so many things that we can do, that it's just really focusing on what are you passionate about, because even though you think it might not make you an income, whatever you're passionate about, there'll be somebody out there that really resonates with that and thinks, oh, thank God they're talking about that, because I really need that, or I want that. And that's what it comes down to. So again, going with your passion, maybe start with something that you know really well, and then that is going to give you the confidence just to keep going as well.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the knowledge and experience you shared with us.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. I hope it's helped some people out there. So yeah, thank you very much.
I'm sure it is. It's amazing. Thank you very much, fellow AVIAPRENEURS. I hope you enjoyed and learned from the stories and experience of Heidi like I did. I look forward to seeing you next week with another episode and another amazing AVIAPRENEUR. Have a great day.